Hey, so this video recap is brought to you by people who are tired of the media constantly lying and people just not being honest about the real world things that are going on. In particular, having to do with Mr. Garcia, originally from El Salvador, but apparently before coming to the United States illegally in 2012, well, this gentleman he and his entire family, including sisters and a brother, parents, and others, moved from El Salvador to Guatemala. Hmm, that's strange. So Robert Gouveia here, who you can find at Robert Gouveia on Rumble or on YouTube, well, he's kind of put together a breakdown of some recent documents that just were uncovered. And I'm bringing this to you now. So, with that said, here we go.
Because that's where the family left to. They left El Salvador and they went to Guatemala. And just to be ultra clear for all of the people on the left who I think they're starting to move on from this story because they realize it's kind of bad politics to defend a wife beating, human trafficking, illegal alien who's a part of a terroristic gang in our country. So I think they're starting to move on. They're like, we're not going to go down on that trip. They canceled that. Hopefully they got insurance, but or not. But remember, this is out of the DOJ, these removal proceedings. And this is how immigration works. You don't get to go file claims in Maryland because you like Judge Zenas rhymes with. This is an immigration court which operates under Article 2. It's not an Article 3 court. Okay. Illegal aliens don't get access to the Article 3 courts in the same way that everybody else does because they're illegal. It is an administrative function to determine whether they're lawful or not and get them out. It's been that way forever until Trump came in. So, this, as we recall, our original argument was Trump could override this immediately. Trump could send him to El Salvador or Guatemala if he wants to, because the Alien Enemies Act ends the withholding by operation of law, which is passed by Congress, right? And codified in the statutes that we've articulated here in the notes at the Lodge. But here's what the judge said, right? The respondent is a native and citizen of El Salvador, which I think is why they were trying to shoehorn this in here. Says Homeland issued a notice to appear. And to be clear, I also wanted to share this. Okay, this is where the document came from. And this cover sheet is different than what they published. So this was originally released by them. And this came over from wearecasa.org. Okay, they're very happy about what they're prosecuting here on behalf of the illegals. So they submitted this. This was their brief to the Fourth Circuit. And in this brief, they did submit a copy of the final order. And it's somewhere down in here, a bunch of stuff, a bunch of affidavits from Jennifer, the wife, and a bunch of other things. But they do have the order in here at some point. My point was they didn't have that cover sheet on there. And the cover sheet is here. And it tells us that this went over to CAIR, right? CAIR, the coalition. And that is a coalition that has changed now. They now call themselves Amica, the Amica group. They say that they are the American Center for Immigration Rights, formerly the CAIR Coalition, unwavering legal defense and litigation for wife beating illegals. All right. So they were representing him and they said, okay, the court sent this notice to them. All right, unable to forward. Attached is a copy of the decision of an immigration judge. This decision is final, can't appeal it within 30 days. If you have questions, your fee waiver request mail there. Attached is a copy of a decision. As a result of your failure to appear at your scheduled removal hearing and your deportation or removal hearing. So, is there also a failure to appear? Like this guy also didn't show up to his court date? Hmm. The decision is final unless a motion to reopen is submitted. Attaches a copy of the decision. You have 30 days to appeal with the appropriate circuit court. Otherwise, you lose that option. Okay. And just again, once again, point out this is due process right here. And guess what? This dude's name is on this document. Abrego Garcia, Kilmore Armado. They left out wife beating, human trafficking, illegal alien, MS-13 gang member, but they got the rest of his name on there. Now, it's due process. He got it. Final order. He had 30 days to do it. He didn't do any of it. Here's what the judge wrote. All right, the respondent's a native. He has already confirmed he's not a citizen of the U.S. He's a native of El Salvador, entered the U.S. at an unknown place, unknown date illegally. He was not admitted or paroled. At master calendar, they admitted the factual allegations in the notice to appear and conceded removability as charged. Just to be clear, we know he's illegal. We are allowed to remove him. That's out of the way. They admitted it by a judge in due process land to make him happy. Based on their admissions and concessions, the court found his removability to be established by clear and convincing evidence. Now, as other relief, the court reserved the matter. So we've considered a bunch of things, right? They submitted a bunch of exhibits, and these are just wild exhibits. We're under attack, right? All these exhibits, the wife's pregnant, all testimony's been admitted and considered, and here's the story. They say Kilmar is a 24-year-old native of El Salvador, born in 1995 in El Salvador. He testified that he fears returning to his country, you presume El Salvador, because of the Barrio 18 gang targeting, threatening him with death, attacking the pupusa business. What are pupusas? They're El Salvadorian stuffed tortillas. We saw that before. Now, the mama, Cecilia, ran the business out of her home. Although the business had no formal storefront, everyone in town knew to get their pupusas from Pupiceria Cecilia. Now, the father, brother, and two sisters all help run the family business. The job was to go to the grocery store of Kilmar to buy pupusa supplies needed for the pupusas. And then he and his brother would do deliveries 4 days a week to people in the neighborhood that ordered pupusas. But then at some point, Barrio 18 realized the family was making money from their pupusa business, and they started to extort Mama Cecilia. They demanded a regular stipend of rent money, beginning with a monthly payment requiring weekly payments. The gang threatened to harm Kilmar, his older brother Cesar, and the family if their demands are not met. They said, if you don't give us this money, Caesar's going to become a part of our gang. So they paid the money on a regular basis whenever they could, and they hid Caesar from the gang. On one occasion, the gang came to the family's home, threatened to eliminate Caesar if the family did not pay the rent, and so they just shipped him to the U.S. They're like, oh man, you can go to America. They're not going to kill you in America. Now, after Caesar left, the gang started recruiting Kilmar. They told Cecilia that she would not have to pay rent anymore if she let him join the gang. Mom said, no, he's not going to join the gang. They said, oh yeah, we're going to take him out. So when he was around 12 years old, I guess the gang came back. They told Cecilia, we're going to take him because you're not paying us pupusa money. The respondent's father stopped the gang from taking Kilmar away by paying the gang all the money that they wanted. And during those days, the gang would watch Kilmar at school as he went back and forth and said, we're going to bring you into our gang, little Kilmar, or give us that pupusa money. The members of the gangs all had tattoos, and they always carried weapons when they were attacking a 12-year-old. Now, eventually, the family had enough. So they said, okay, this is terrible. Our 12-year-old's getting attacked by gang members. So what'd they do? They moved. Sounds smart, but they moved 10 minutes away. Oh, no. To Los Nogales. The town was 10 minutes away. Shortly after the family moved, they said, oh, well, they're just around the block. Like, we're going to go get some chicken fingers. Do you want to just swing by the Kilmars? And let their fellow gang members, they say, oh no, they got pupusas over there. Oh yeah, let's go. Gang members know that the family had moved to the neighborhood. So then the gang visited the house demanding rent money for those pupusas again. You're not getting away from us. I think was this the plot of one of those Bad Boys movies with Will Smith? I think it was. They went to the house twice, threatening to attack and kill the two sisters. The respondents' parents were so fearful that they kept Kilmar inside the home as much as possible. Finally, the family decided they had to close the pupusa business, and then they had to move again. Where'd they move this time? Oh, yeah, 15 minutes down the road again. Even at this new location, the judge is like, they had to keep Kilmar indoors because of threats on his life. Here you go. After 4 months of living in fear, they sent Kilmar to the U.S. because we'll just take care of it. No problem. 4 months. Wow, shocking. You moved twice, 15 minutes away. Great work. Now, even though the respondent's father, check this out, was a former policeman, the family never reported anything. Isn't that convenient? About the gang extorting the family business. No reports. It's a father. The gang members threatened Mama, telling her if she ever reported anything, we're going to eliminate your whole family. And the family believed him because they were well aware of the corruption in El Salvador. They believed that they reported it to the police would do nothing. And now, here it comes. At present, even though the family has now shut down the pupusa business, the Barrio 18 gang continues to harass and threaten Kilmar's two sisters and parents in Guatemala. In Guatemala.
So Guatemala, right? You heard that, right? The entire family moved to Guatemala. They're no longer in El Salvador, right? They moved twice in El Salvador from their original home to the first one. Then they moved again to a second one. And at that point, that's when they sent Garcia to the United States at 12 years old. Okay. And he arrived here reportedly in 2012, I think it was. And he was initially picked up by the FBI during a raid investigating human trafficking, where he was thought to be affiliated with the MS-13 gang. And they had evidence of this, apparently. This is all in question. But ultimately, he got picked up in 2019, right? That's 6 years ago. So, yeah, let's continue.
Guatemala, right? That's where they're living. That's where he would return. That's the family. Additionally, they have targeted a brother-in-law who also lives there. They're not even in El Salvador anymore. Now, the respondent's wife also testified, but her testimony related to two other particular social groups not reached in this decision. And what they have to do, right, is say that he's a part of a community that's under attack. That's why we can't send him back. So they're going to define the family as the community. It's the Papusa family. So they also said, well, we're also part of this group, the MS-13 male group. So that, and we're also immediate family of Jennifer Vasquez, who's a citizen. So like he's part of that group for protection, or he's part of this group for protection. And the court said, no, we don't have to put them in either one of those buckets. We'll just put them in the El Salvador Papusa bucket, and that's going to be good.
So again, the El Salvador Papusa, as Robert says, this is where the family lives presently. This is not in El Salvador, just for clarity, it's in Guatemala. So not associated, or at least not identified to be part of the MS-13 gang, and also within El Salvador, that is. And so he shouldn't be concerned about the Barrio 18 gang. And secondarily, they denied any type of association to his wife, Jennifer Vasquez, saying that they can't grant it based on that. So on those two things, they can't base this. So Robert continues.
Good enough for them because pupusas are good. So they wrote, so an applicant for asylum bears the burden. Obviously, he did not. Fear of persecution is another thing. Says they have an evidentiary burden of proving this. The Board of Immigration Appeals has recognized a bunch of things and more. But in the instant matter, they say Kilmar provided credible responses to the questions asked. His testimony was consistent. He appeared to provide substantial documents and affidavits from his family that described the pupusa business, described the threats to various family members, and the court found that credible, right? Because they wrote a bunch of letters and affidavits. And if you've ever been through this, you may have written a letter from somebody, even in DUI cases and stuff like this, or domestic violence cases. You go out, this is not Rob. I never saw him like this. This is unbecoming of him. I know him as an upstanding father and a great person and all thing. You go, can you write something for me? Like, you're kind of just write it, okay? Just please. Okay, fine. Okay. You better be nice to me though, moving forward. All right, I'll write it. The court finds the respondent credible. Now, there was a 1-year filing deadline. Remember, he came in here illegally. Now suddenly he's claiming asylum. I'm under attack. Why don't you file asylum then and follow our rules? So you break the law, break into the country, and then don't even apply for asylum when we're so generous to offer it to you. So he comes in here, missed the 1-year deadline. It's untimely, can't do that. Now look at this little squiggle on this document here. Here, the respondent's asylum application is time barred. Sorry, you missed it. He testified he entered the US in 2012, but he did not file his application until July 2019. But originally, it was August 2019. So if this was a mistake, if there was an error, if Guatemala really should have been El Salvador, why didn't the judge just cross it out and scribble in there El Salvador when he was proofreading this order? Why did he write an order, find a mistake, and correct it, and not correct another mistake? Because it's Guatemala. 7 years after his entry into the US and beyond, he has shown no change or extraordinary circumstances that would entitle him to the 1-year bar, so he's gone. Now, withholding of removal, right? Then we get into this. Here's the rules on how withholding works. We also talk about past prosecution and how to interpret that. Now, the respondent has suffered this persecution as he was threatened on more than one occasion. And the DHS bears the burden of showing that that has changed. Okay, this dude's under attack. You got to show he's not under attack if you want to send him back. Now, an alien has to show certain things, and persecution can take many forms. But based on the above, Kilmar has demonstrated that he was subject to past persecution on a protected ground. He's entitled to the presumption that this could happen again. And given his testimony and evidence concerning official corruption and other abuses, he's demonstrated authorities would not be able to protect him. Given country conditions and his inability to avoid the threat in internal relocation, this whole paragraph, the respondent could not necessarily avoid the threat through internal relocation, nor would it be reasonable to expect him to do so. Here it comes. Homeland has failed to carry their burden to show that there are changed circumstances in Guatemala that would result in.
So this is the key. They were only focusing on Guatemala. There's more to come, so stay with us because he's going to get into the actual end game of the conclusion just in a minute or two.
In his life not being threatened or that internal relocation is possible and reasonable. You see El Salvador in that paragraph anywhere? No. The facts here show that the Barrio gang continues to harass them in El Salvador. In fact, the family had to move 3 times. Now, to be cognizable under the statute, you got to show these things. Under Fourth Circuit precedent, family ties may be a basis for a social group. So remember, they were trying to shove him in. No, like, illegally identified MS-13 gangbang. No, not in that group. How about friends and family of Jennifer Vasquez? Nope, not that group. Well, how about a family is a social group? Yeah, he says, maybe. Membership in a perceived criminal gang is not a social group, obviously. But whether this is a family social group is one reason and gives us some other cases from other situations. But he says the evidence in this case, quite clearly, at least one central reason for the past prosecution is because he was his mama's son and he was a member of the nuclear family. That the respondent is his mother's son is the reason why he, not another reason, was threatened with death. Right? So it's because he is the Papusa errand boy that he's in danger, not because he's affiliated with the gang or doing anything like that. He was threatened with death because he was Cecilia's son, and the gang targeted Mama to get the Papusa money. Now, the court finds that this social group, the family, is cognizable. It's immutable. He can't change this. He can't leave the family. So the family is now a protected class, and he's a part of it. Now, with respect to the social distinction, like, is the Papusa business notable enough, like a Wikipedia article? Yeah, neighbors and others in the community saw the pupusa business was a distinct business. Everyone knew that Cecilia was where you go. You get your pupusas over there. And Kilmar is going to deliver those pupusas to your house 4 days a week.
But again, remember, the mother, the 2 sisters, and the father all moved to Guatemala. So they are no longer in El Salvador. They were still being persecuted or harassed in Guatemala by another faction of the same gang, the Barrio 18, at least reportedly according to his own statements. But that means that El Salvador isn't a place of an issue. There's no family members there. So how does that work? The family members are all in there, and he's being assigned by this judge to specifically the family unit. That's what's cognizable. So removal to El Salvador has zero impact on the family situation. And Robert will get into it in a few minutes, but it turns out that you're only allowed to list one country in one of these types of exemptions. So the country listed was Guatemala, not even El Salvador. And there's no documents been provided up to this point to the public that anyone's uncovered in all the time that this has been going on. The only comments that showed El Salvador was a rewrite from one of the petitions that were put in, but the underlying information that it's referencing is this court document, which again doesn't bar him from removal to El Salvador. It bars him from removal to Guatemala. Interesting, right? Let's listen to some more.
And so it is recognizable. He says, but this case is a close call, though. The Abrego family was socially distinct. It's similar to another case. He says, this is a close call, but the pupusa business is well known. And so, again, mom, like this case is connected to mom, right? Connected to mom. Where is mom? Guatemala. Hello. She had to move. The applicant for withholding of removal under the CAT bears the burden of proving, and claims against torture, they obviously lose that one. So all of it here, the respondent has not shown that he's going to be tortured if he were removed to El Salvador. Okay, so then there comes back El Salvador. Hmm. So
But for clarity, this reference to El Salvador is about torture. That's CAT, claims against torture, right? So that's not recognized here. They're specifically stating that it is not more likely than not. I know that sounds like a double negative. I think he makes comment about that as well, but this is the key, right? So this is only about the cat claim, which they're dismissing and saying, no, you don't have any grounds for that. But this section 4 for the conclusion is key.
claims against torture, they obviously lose that one. So all of it here, the respondent has not shown that he's going to be tortured if he were removed to El Salvador. Okay, so then there comes back El Salvador. Hmm. So they talk about his upbringing. The whole family moves to Guatemala. Sister's there, everybody's there. Judge talks about Guatemala and saying Homeland has not made a presentation there. The judge's final order in conclusion says there again, once again, are not any evidence. There's no evidence that he's going to be safe in Guatemala. So you can't send him to Guatemala. Signed, order of withholding is granted. Don't send him to Guatemala. Guess what? Trump didn't send him to Guatemala. Now, the poison pill came out in the form of Ruvani, who was then later fired, as we've already talked about. And this article explains it is country specific, written here by Andrew R. Arthur. The judge picks a country. It's not a list of countries. I'd like to also not go here or go here. I hear Russia's bad at this time of year. Argentina, Javier Milei, I don't really like a lot of his policies all that much. So can you send me not there, Judge? No, you're not going to Guatemala, but other places you can go. So it seems like everything thus far is in order. And the poison pill DOJ attorney who was fired, who cajoled an inaccurate declaration from Robert Cerna, infected the case. And then they filed this in Judge Zenas's courtroom and took it from there. And they didn't file until he was already gone. He's from El Salvador originally. Family moved to Guatemala, said can't go back to Guatemala, but El Salvador is perfect. Now, if they've got some other evidence on this, if the CASA folks have some other evidence, they've already put this all together in this big, massive document, 198 pages. They submitted it to the Fourth Circuit. Why don't they come out? Just give us the minute order. Just show. He says El Salvador, show it in there. And all of the adoptions of the erroneous declarations should be considered invalid. And I don't know what the DOJ is doing, not making this argument more aggressively. Maybe they know something that we don't know. Maybe the minute order comes out and says El Salvador is included on there. But we have not seen it. And I have not seen anybody else who has shared a copy of it. If you have one, I'd love to see it. We'll come here and show it on the screen. But at this moment, we have not seen it. And that's always a curious thing. You'd think if they had a very clear order that said, don't remove this dude to El Salvador, release it, just publish it. Don't send him to El Salvador. Very simple. But they don't have that. Why don't they have that? And why did Judge Zenas just take this case up and run with it? Because maybe it doesn't exist. Okay, so we got some more spicy business happening here. As we saw at the start of the show, on April 23rd, we got 2 additional filings. Let's do a refresh to see if anything dropped while we were live here. Doesn't look like it. But sealed responses coming in. A motion to stay regarding the order on the motion for other relief. We don't know what it is. It's sealed, but they want a stay, right? And the judge is asking for discovery, remember, back and forth. We want interrogatories. We want documents. We covered all that yesterday. But the judge is now saying, or they're asking for a stay. Then there was a response also sealed, filed by the Kilmar wife beater attorneys in response. And so we'll see what the judge says there. But there's some other things happening. Are they bringing him back? Are they telling him, actually, we figured it out? The order in Guatemala was the order. El Salvador is perfect. Or what? What is it? We don't know. But a lot is filed under seal. Now,
And yeah, so that's pretty much where we're at this point. Now, again, this is being recorded. This was televised or streamed on April 23rd in the afternoon. So that's where it is. So if there's something else we haven't seen yet, so be it. However, based on the preponderance of evidence at this point being presented and available to the public, at least with knowledge, yeah, they have no case. Perhaps that's why everybody's getting quiet in the media and backing away from the story, because it's just not legitimate, and they're realizing it's a lost cause. But hey, you know, there could be something else that we just don't know at this point. That said, this is it for now, and hopefully you learned something today. All right, take it easy.